Yo, what's going on guys? Hope you're all well. So for this video I just wanted to speak a little bit about what golden hour lighting actually is. The interesting thing about the golden hour is it's not something that you usually get to see happen on a day-to-day basis, and when it does happen it only lasts for around 45 minutes to an hour. But if you are one of those few lucky people who gets to see it happen on a regular basis, you'll understand why so many different painters and photographers really enjoy including this type of lighting in their own personal work. So really the main focus for this video was to just speak about what golden hour lighting is and how and why it does happen in nature, and I'll also show you guys some tips and tricks so you can implement it in your own personal work as well. So without further ado, let's just get straight into it. Okay, so why does the golden hour actually happen? So before we answer this question, we just have to clear up a few things about sunlight and how sunlight interacts with the Earth's atmosphere. So many people might not know this, but the light that comes from the sun is actually white light. You might think that it's yellow or it's a pale orange kind of hue, but the light that comes from the sun is white light. And white light is just a combination of all the different colors that exist on the visible light spectrum. So think about all the colors on the rainbow, so red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. All of those colors, when you combine them together, that is what creates white light, and that's the type of light that's emitted in sunlight. The thing that you have to keep in mind about those colors is that different colors that exist on that visible light spectrum have different wavelengths. So colors like blue and violet, those are the colors with the shortest wavelength, and then colors like red and orange, those colors are the colors with the longest wavelength. So I've just gone ahead and created a little bit of a crude diagram on screen in Photoshop. So what we have here is we have Earth, and then that you, that little person there, that is you. And that dashed line that you see above, that's just the path that the sun takes throughout the day. So what we're basically seeing here is that the sun is in space and it's sending out its own sunlight, and then before it reaches me and you on Earth, it has to interact with the Earth's atmosphere. The Earth's atmosphere in this diagram, that's the blue squiggly lines with the little blue dots. The sunlight has to pass through that atmosphere before it reaches me and you. So something interesting happens before the sunlight reaches us and while it's interacting with the atmosphere. So these little blue circles that you see on the screen, these are what is in the atmosphere. So that's things like pollution, dust, water vapor, moisture, air molecules, that kind of thing. So when the light rays come from the sun and it interacts with whatever is in the atmosphere, the shorter wavelengths of light, so that's the blue wavelengths, those wavelengths are scattered into the sky and into the environment. So that's why when you look up at the sky during the day, the sky itself appears blue, because those shorter wavelengths of blue light, they're being scattered into the sky and into the surrounding environment. So during golden hour, there's something slightly different that's happening. So because the sun is at a very shallow angle in the sky, it's closer towards the horizon, the sunlight has to travel a greater distance before it reaches me and you on Earth. So because it's having to travel a greater distance, it has to pass through more layers of atmosphere, and because it's interacting with more atmosphere, there's more of those shorter blue and violet wavelengths that are being scattered. So the only light that ends up reaching me and you on Earth, that ends up being the longer wavelengths of light. So the reds, the oranges and the yellows. That's why the light that appears at that time usually looks very golden, hence the term golden hour. I hope that made sense. So all of that is interesting, but how do we actually go about painting this stuff? So the main trick to painting things during golden hour is it's almost the same as painting something in sunlight. You just have to tweak 2 or 3 things. So here on screen there's 2 balls. The one that's on the left, which is ball A, that's lit in usual outdoor sunlight, and then the one that's on the right, which is ball B, that ball is lit during golden hour lighting or sunset. The main difference, obviously off of the rip, that you can notice between the two is that there's a difference between colour and saturation. So for ball A, which is the one that is lit in usual sunlight, sunlight during this time has a very desaturated pale yellow colour, but the sunlight during golden hour has more of those red and those orange wavelengths that are present. So the colours themselves shift more from yellow during the day towards orange and red at golden hour, and those colours also become more saturated as well. If you look at those colour swatches as well, you can see that there's a difference between the two. Ball A, those colour swatches appear very bright, but they're also desaturated colours, whereas the swatches against ball B have some of those more warmer and deeper colours. So make sure, first of all, that you're picking the correct colours depending on the time of day that you want to choose, and also make sure that you're choosing the correct saturation as well. The second difference between the two is values and brightness. So if you take both of these balls and you convert them both into grayscale, you'll notice that there's a difference between value and brightness. The average light value on ball A, that's a very bright value, so it's almost close to pure white on the value scale. But when you take a look at ball B, the average light value is slightly darker, maybe like 2 or 3 value steps darker on the value scale. So even though the colours at this time can appear very strong and saturated, they are actually less bright in value. So make sure to keep that in mind. So the reason for that is because the colours that you see during golden hour, like those reds and those oranges, those colours at their highest saturation are actually naturally darker than the pale yellow sunlight that you see throughout the day. So the final difference that you'll see between these two is the difference in the colours in the shadows. So ball A has more bluish shadows. The reason for that is that because there's more ambient light coming from the sky and it's reaching the shadow areas on the ball and the ground, which is what gives it that blue colour. Whereas for ball B, you can be as expressive as you want with those shadow colours. The reason is that because during golden hour and during sunset, the sky itself takes on some really interesting and vivid colours, so you can let some of those colours show up in the shadows of your painting. I've decided to make the shadows for ball B more towards red and purple, but you can really use any colours that you want, and even if you want to use blue as well, that's absolutely fine. But really the main point for tip number 3 is just be as expressive and try experimenting with different shadow colours to really sell the effect. Okay, so what I've gone ahead and done is I've just recorded a very quick time lapse of a demo or a painting I've done. This is just to showcase some of those tips that we were speaking about earlier. So for me, the first step when I'm doing these paintings is to just get a rough sketch of what the image is or what I want the image or the painting to look like. So I didn't really spend too much time on this because the main focus of this particular study was to just get the colours and the lighting correct. So yeah, I just spent the first sort of 10 or 15 minutes just getting some of those basic lines in, trying to get a decent composition and making sure that the position of the trees and the different elements was correct. Once the sketch was done, then I moved on to blocking in some of those sky colours. Now, you'll see in the video as well that there is a gradation for the sky. So towards the horizon at the bottom, you have more of those pink and those purple hues, and then as you look up towards the sky, it becomes, you know, sort of the characteristic blue violet colour that you usually see on a normal sunny day. So that's something that you see, you know, during golden hour line. You see quite interesting colours happening near the horizon, and then when you look up towards the top of the sky, I think it's called the zenith, those colours are just the usual blue violet colours that you see on a normal sunny day. So when I'm usually painting landscapes like this, I like to work from all the way back towards whatever is closest to the viewer or the camera. So like I did first, I painted in the sky, and then it's the background mountains, and then we work our way towards the trees and whatever it is that's in the foreground. I think that's like a pretty good way to approach landscapes. You can't always do that, like you can't always start with whatever's in the back. It isn't always possible, but it's kind of like a good rule of thumb just to stick by. You know, if it's your first time painting landscapes, or if you're not very sure on where to start, paint whatever's in the back first and then work towards what is closest to the viewer or the camera. A little bit of a side note as well, this canvas that I'm painting on is quite small. I think it was about 1500 pixels or something in width. when you're learning new concepts, especially things with lighting or time of day or color palettes, whatever it is that you're focusing on, try your best to work small, because when you're working on small canvases, it just helps you to focus on whatever you think is important, or whatever it is that your objective is. Like if you're trying to focus on getting interesting colors in your work, or an interesting kind of lighting, even golden hour lighting, whatever it is, when you're working on a small canvas, you don't focus too much on the details, you're just focusing on what matters. So even I think 1500 pixels is too big. I would actually recommend painting on canvases that are around 1000 max, maybe even 500 pixels, because that way there isn't even any point zooming into your painting, because all you're going to see at the end is just a bunch of pixels. You can't even add details if you wanted to. So paint on smaller canvases, especially if you're starting out. I think it's kind of like a cheat code on how to get good very quickly. So when I first started painting and I was trying to paint, sunset lighting and golden hour lighting, I used to run into so many fucking issues. Because the problem was I would always approach those paintings like I was painting a usual sunny day, like what everyone else teaches you online. So when I would try to paint these different times of day, my colors would always look washed out and grey, and the saturation just wasn't what I was looking for. So once I figured out that the saturated colors that you see during this time of day are usually darker from the normal daytime light, then everything started working for me, because I was basically trying to keep the colors bright and saturated at the same time, and then I'd get so frustrated because I couldn't get those really nice, interesting, punchy colors, and then I would fucking abuse color dodge and overlay and all these adjustment layers, and my image would just look absolutely deep fried. Like it would look so wrong when I tried to do that. And then once I started to understand and read up on the different types of lighting and how it interacts with the atmosphere, and some of those tips and tricks that I shared with you earlier on in the video, when I picked those up myself, that's when it finally started working for me and I was able to get those nice saturated colors. So I think if you run into the same issues that I did when I was first starting out, where you're trying to paint these really interesting times of days, but you're not getting the colors that you want, everything looks washed out, it looks grey, I completely understand. Just apply those tips and it should work out for you just fine. A little bit of a side note actually, when I was doing this painting, I approached it a little bit different to how I usually do my paintings. So usually I use the hue cube, I think it's called the hue cube, or in Photoshop that's kind of like just the usual color picker. I think some other people use the HSB slider, hue, saturation and brightness. Those two are very similar, but for this particular painting I was actually using the RGB or the lab sliders. I've used these before, granted, but the only reason why I don't use these often is because simply I just don't remember, like I forget to use them. But every time I have used them, I tend to get very interesting colors show up in my work. So what I would recommend is, if you're not used to using them, just at the start of your painting, when you're blocking in your basic colors and you're blocking in whatever it is that you're painting, just use what you usually use, like the hue cube or the HSB sliders, whatever it is. And then once you've got your basic colors down, then just start messing around a little bit with those lab and those RGB sliders, and I think you'll end up getting some really interesting colors come through. So sometimes you can't always manually paint those sunset colors. So I know I said before that I would abuse color dodge and overlay, but I don't think it's a bad thing to use them. Like right at the end of your painting, if you still feel like you need to give it that extra kick and you really want to sell that effect, then using things like color dodge and overlay and some of these photo fillers, it can really help you to sell that effect. It's not cheating to use any of those tools, just make sure you don't overdo them and end up deep frying your image. So just be very subtle with your techniques, just do it on a separate layer so you can toggle it on and off to see whether what you've added actually helps you with achieving that effect or whether it's taken away from it. And even at the end of this video, you'll see that I kind of use them as well. So I don't think there's any issue with using color dodge and overlay. You don't have to paint everything directly and manually. Just make sure you don't overdo it. That's all I'm saying. Alright, so this is the finished painting for this study. I think it took me around 2 hours to complete it from start to finish, and I'm very happy with how it's turned out. I think it really conveys that mood of golden hour and sunset and all of that good stuff. But anyways, this video is getting too long, so I do need to wrap it up. Thank you guys as always for watching, and congratulations if you made it to the end of the video. If you found it helpful, please like and subscribe, and if you've got any sort of feedback or suggestions for some future topics, then do let me know in the comments. And what the fuck, I guess I'll see you in the next one. Take care.